You know, I just noticed that you had a question on the thing about who's creating this.
Yeah, because you know, last week's really deep into the responsibility of my creations, and every time this happens, I'm just like, okay, what is the reflection for me?
Mm,
And I was curious, like it happened in that moment and you were dealing with that, so it's I don't want to like trigger or make you more challenged in that moment, because it was tough moment. I actually disconnected and I was like, okay, I'm leaving, but then I was like, no, I want to bring more love, so I will come back and
mm,
stand there with him.
yeah.
uh yeah, so it's, I don't know if you want to share it or if you want to take it for later, and I would love to like listen to the story behind that.
No, so just for clarity, you're asking something about why you think that happened. Is
Yeah,
yeah?
yeah, what part in you is
Uh huh.
actually co-creating that?
Well, so it's interesting. Okay, so I said maybe I don't know if you heard the beginning of the call, but I introduced a little meditation, and I was saying it's between we start here, then there's yellow brick road, and we
Hmm.
look at the star, yeah? And it's about sometimes we walk in our path and distraction comes along, yeah? And it's just noticing the power of the distraction actually strengthens the field. So in that regard, for me, this example is perfectly fine. It's just like these people just come in and zoom bomb, which often happens. So that does
Mm.
happen anyway. But for me, it's like, well, can I stay steady in the midst of this? It's like, thank you so much for showing up these kind of characters from the subconscious, subpersonalities dancing in to go woo woo, yeah, wow, wow, with not much to say really. It's like they kind of ran out of steam after a while. And it was just this interestingness about me. Is like, can I breathe with that and just stay walking my path towards my star and being myself? Yeah? So I felt it was actually quite a good example, to be honest. Yeah. I mean, it was personally a little bit disturbing initially because I had my eyes closed. I was in quite a deep state meditation. I had this big voice in my
Yeah.
face. And it's ah! So I did actually get psychically shocked for a moment. Just, but there again, isn't that what it's like? If we just look at that for a moment.
I can't hear you now. You're muted, no?
How about that? Good.
Yeah, great to have you back.
So here's the dance of illusion. I never left. Do you see? This is the thing. Okay, so this is my relationship to contrast. Yeah, is that I feel God and the devil are playing chess, and there's a oneness here. Light and shadow are partners in our evolution, and that challenge, if you see it rightly, can always strengthen your background. Can always call you to a deeper state of existence where you feel more harmonic. Yeah. Now, if you give into it and see it and name it as the enemy, if you bring judgment to it, then you obviously amplify the resistance and it gets stronger, stronger, stronger. And then you judge that, it gets stronger, stronger. Then you have this full on combat. And then you create Star Wars, and then you create good and evil, then you create religion, and then you create some kind of problem to resolve the evil in the world. Yeah? Instead of recognizing from the shamanic perspective, the nature of the shadow and the contrast, with this consideration, perhaps it's all part of the game perfectly. A deeper consideration that, wow, can we review and look at darkness in a different way, the unconscious in a different way, and see that perhaps it's an opportunity for us to remind us, first of all, that I'm not this. It's a reminder when you see something in the contrast, it helps strengthen your resolve, of your direction. Often when I see other people who are doing things which are not in alignment with their heart or presence, it gives me a deepening invitation to
Mm.
deepen into my own commitment. And then there's another work there, which is about compassion. And for me, it's interesting. I was in the middle of an I am conversation, and this is a bit like in some meditations, this often happens. You get really strong energy come in to try and knock you off center.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the deeper you go into your heart, the deeper the spectrum of contrast. And it's all asking for love. It's all asking for love, all of it. So am I going to get distracted and knocked off center and move into it and get disturbed by it? Or am I going to stay present as I am and love it anyway, knowing that that is also part of me? So, my general way is, yeah, there was a bit of momentarily shock in my system. Then I was figuring out how to take them out of the waiting room. Then there was, confusion about who do I know and who do I not know. And in the midst of all of that, it's just that I'm going to carry on anyway. So I think that's and here we are, lovely. I'm so happy you're here, and we can have a little chat. And this is something about, I'll share a vision I had actually years ago. I was in an ayahuasca ceremony, and I was in the middle of the jungle in this ceremony, in the imaginal aspect, and I saw this. There was a pathway, and either side of the pathway were these Indians and indigenous people with all sorts of weapons, yeah? Like really ferocious, painted faces, all different traditions, tomahawks and bows and arrows and swords and all sorts of things. And I saw myself and I looked down and I was completely naked with nothing, okay, in my vision. So there am I standing in front of all these terrifying people. And my mission was to get to the cave, which was the other side, where I knew the panther goddess was. There was this intuition, there was this knowing that I was meant to walk through this gauntlet to get to the panther goddess. And I breathed and I breathed and I looked at their ferocity and their fear and their terror, and I knew I had no weapons. I had, and I thought, what do I have? I have my heart. I've got my love. And in that moment, I just dropped in, closed my eyes, breathed, centered myself, and I opened my eyes, and they all had their heads bowed.
Mm.
And I walked through the pathway into the cave and met the panther goddess, which was great. Had a whole lot of visionary experience and connection there. And for me, that was a really clear example of how life is. Life, we've all got our gauntlets. We've all got our terrifying sub-personalities and the man next door and the boss and everyone else who's doing their different things to knock us off center apparently. But actually, the invitation all the time is to get back into your heart and bring love, bring love, bring love, no matter what. And it's that insistence on no matter what, under all conditions, at every
Yeah.
single time. Which for me is that's the difference. They often say the difference between a saint and a sinner is the saint just never gave up. Is persistence. I'm going to go all the way home, not halfway home, all the way. So yeah, there's a bit of stubbornness in me, which is I'm not giving up. It's like I know this is true. I've seen this reflected so many times in so many people. I know this is true, even though everything else in the conditional reality may be trying to convince you otherwise.
Mm.
Especially now, especially now, it's like there's this blanket of illusion all over humanity, and what do you do with that? I'm having these kind of conversations with many people at the moment, have done for the last year, and what a lot of people are doing with this is they're growing and evolving in spite of it. It's like, there is no terror, there's no fear going to get me down or knock me off center. There's no panic with vaccines or this, that, the other. It's like there's an apparent global chaos, but actually who I am and how I feel is more and more powerful, centered, connected.
Exactly. Yeah, I have the same experience.
It's actually had the opposite effect. If people are trying to knock you
Yeah.
off center, they don't realize they're strengthening the core. If you choose to see it that way. So this is like a working relationship with resistance.
Mm.
Hey, do you have any questions about abundance? I'm happy to carry on talking for longer. I was going to finish at 9, but I'd like to chat to you if you want to.
Mm. Like first of all, I just feel to express my gratitude because I was today just reached by the message from my friend sharing your invitation, and I was like, okay, that sounds really cool, and it's perfect timing for me. So it's really nice that you are bringing your energy and love into the space, and then at the end, I'm just sitting here with you and having a nice chat. So it's really nice, and there was moment when you were sharing. I joined like in the middle of the of this thing, and I really enjoyed the dropping in and kind of like touching the root actually at why there is this not deserve and not worthy pattern and belief system in me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm dancing around it a couple of weeks now, and like really observing that and making laugh with it, and what is the message there. And today I really found some important piece. So I'm really glad.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and about abundance, like I feel more in the mode of receiving and digesting and integrating what's coming to me today. It's really like that. So there is nothing more I want to like shape, what is coming back to me. I'm just like open to receive. So everything you said makes sense, and it's kind of like confirmation
Mm-hmm.
of my inner progress in last weeks and months. Yeah, it's like actually like celebration moment, because it's like, yay,
Alrighty,
that
yeah. Yeah.
Um, like for me, it would be interesting actually to personally to know more about your story. Like that's something I really enjoy. You know, where
Hmm.
what is this path behind you to becoming this being, you know, like with the wisdom and connection and alignment, and I would love to hear more about your challenges and like this human side, because that's something we all share also.
Yeah,
Yeah,
great. Thanks for the invitation. Also, just checking. I didn't check. I should have checked that. Are you okay? It's being recorded because
yeah,
yeah, it's good.
yeah, I'm
If,
fine.
if if you share anything or say anything later you don't want recorded, just let me know and I'll edit it later.
Okay.
Um, yeah, no, I appreciate the invitation. Guy, the human being. What is my yeah? Now this is something that's really really important because and for example, it's like okay, so you got Jesus, right? So you got this story in the Bible of him up to a 12-year-old, then he disappears for like 15, 20 years, and then shows up as the master. Yeah? And I was always curious about this. Well, where did he pop off to for this time? Why was there no record of this? This is the formative years. He's in puberty. He's growing up into manhood. Yeah, that's the part of the story I would have liked to know about.
Mm,
You know, you're a boy, and you have this little question time with the priests or the Pharisees, and then you come back as the life and master. Yeah? Anyway, I was so insistent upon this. I found this book called The Lost Years of Jesus. Yeah, and I don't know how much of it's factual, imaginary, or whatever, but at least it filled in a gap of possibility. And of course, he went off and meditated and studied and practiced healing and did all sorts of esoteric things to master himself and the forces of life. Yeah? And I think this is the important part of all of these stories is not to give us the conclusion. You know, I mean, it's also, which is great, why you asked me this question, because I could sit here and spout off my principles of abundance that I've realized on the way. Yeah? And yeah, of course, they'll have some, you know, benefit to see the principles of what I've realized at the end of a certain journey to up to a point. But actually, why you've got to that place of realizing the principles in the first place humanizes it and actually gives you and everyone else the pathway. You know, it shows people what do you move through to get to this. Yeah? So yeah, I think for me is okay. So one of my origin stories, if you like, around this deep origin story that made a huge difference and impact in my life was when I was like 12 years old. So I'd just been sexually abused by a man in the village, which was pretty traumatic and uncomfortable. And then about 2 months later, I was sent off to boarding school, all boys Catholic boarding school for the next 8 years. Yeah? And I was traumatized by these two events together because I didn't share about the abuse until 10 years later. I buried it, buried it, buried it. And then I just went off into this very masculine environment, which was all about, you know, dog eat dog. It was like the Lord of the Flies, really. We'd be brushing our teeth and you get shot with blue tack from an air gun when you're brushing your teeth. That really was horrific. You know,
mm,
some
mm,
of the things that happened in public school. Hey, all of this kind of stuff took me right into such a deep resolve. Like, first of all, I had to survive the situation. That was it. And on the first evening I got there, so I was traumatized, left my family, and I love my family, love my village, love my friends. And suddenly I felt this huge wave of abandonment as I was left isolated on this island of this, you know, prep school, um, surrounded by people I didn't know on a dark winter's night, and it was terrifying on all the levels. Yeah? Interesting enough, our school and another school was one of the foundations for Hogwarts. So it actually looked like that. It was one of the foundations of where that came from. Yeah? So if you can imagine sort of darkness, terror, ghouls, that was it. That was it. Yeah? Anyway, I was there on the first night, and up until that point, I hadn't really had a sense of religion. It's like, you know, my granny was religious, my dad was occasionally religious at Christmas and Easter, but I was really grounded, embodied, you know, fishing, climbing trees, getting apples, cycling. You know, I was very in my sensual existence up until I was like 12. Yeah? Then in this puberty moment, sent away to school in this mode of terror, carrying on this repressed emotional pain, I found myself kneeling down on this first evening in prayer. Right, we were in
mm,
prayer time, and up until that point, I hadn't really realized anything about religion. Nothing. You know, it hadn't even been on my radar because I didn't feel separate. I didn't feel a need. You know, I just felt so whole and home with the great goddess and all that was creation. Yeah? But in this state of trauma, suddenly I felt disassociated and disconnected. And I prayed like I never prayed before. Yeah? Like literally, like I never prayed before. And in that first moment, I got like a direct hit of pure blessing.
mm,
I got absolute download of grace that so surprised me. I was kneeling down crying secretly, not wanting to show my tears to the boys because that would have been really I would have got beaten up and teased, and so I was trying to hide what I was actually feeling. And inside of that, I was like, God, if you're there, come to me, come to me. I need you. I need this. And it was this kind of begging, uplifting prayer. And in that moment, I like, felt the blessing of grace move through my system. And it's hard to put in words, but it really was like golden light pouring through my whole body
Mm.
and dissolving fear, tension, loss, abandon. And it brought me to a state of home deep inside of me. So that was like my first moment of prayer. And then that got me curious about what happens here.
Mm.
Like immediately I went into like, well, I want this again. How do I get to this? And I prayed some more. I taught myself meditation. I studied loads of spiritual texts. As a 12-year-old, I went to see the abbot of the monastery every week to ask him questions about the nature of spirituality, and was very unsatisfied by his answers and thought, well, if he can't answer me, he used to give me cocoa and biscuits. And I'd ask him about reincarnation, the nature of purity of life and vibration. This would never answer my questions.
Mm.
I thought if the abbot can't answer, I need to look inside. And that was where this kind of inner resolve started as a 12, 13, 14-year old. I used to meditate and connect. And I went on many, many different internal visionary states, and all sorts of phenomena happened. And then there was another experience at school. A friend of ours had this brain tumor. He was the same age, he was in our year, and he was told he's got a couple of months to live. We were taken into the abbey to do a prayer healing ceremony for him. Again, up until that point, Sundays was like compulsory religion. You go in there and priest would spout off his things, and everyone would sit and wait for it to be finished. Yeah? But
Yeah.
this was like on a Thursday or Friday evening, and we were going there for our friend. So the whole school went, 600 people, and he was sat up the front. And the prayer field, the energy, I mean, it's like, whoa, absolutely phenomenal. It was like, everybody was loving him and wishing and hoping. And the guy lived for about, I don't know, I think he died 2 years ago.
Wow.
Not long ago, yeah. His 4 months went into like 30 years. And I really feel something shifted there.
Mm.
I remember rubbing my eyes in the prayer, like, with him in my complete heart focus, and I see all these colors, and then this energy, and then this like spirit move through my system. And again, it got very, very, very interested in this like psychic phenomena of different dimensions. I'm an Aquarian. I'm interested in the occult and esoteric things, and all things fascinate me. And
Mm.
my insistence on finding out for myself. If somebody says something to me like this is the truth, I want to go and find out and feel it, and know it, and meet the master who told them about it. And I've spent most of my life traveling around the world and meeting different people to look under their stones and see what they've got and what they've realized. So I've been this student, still am this student position of like discovery a lot of the time. So yeah, in many ways it was like trauma, initial trauma that led me to this moment of grace. That was one thing, and I think that's true for a lot of people. Car crashes, near-death experiences, illnesses. Suddenly you wake up. It's like this awakening, and then this kind of resurgence of energy that comes through my system as a consequence. And then I got curious. This curiosity just came
Yeah.
through my whole system. Yeah, I could carry on quite easily, but do you want to interrupt me and say anything?
Yeah, definitely. Like, curiosity is the key. Like, I really resonate with your story because I experienced probably very similar moment when I was 12. I was also abused by the man sexually,
Oh,
and it took me a long time to really like integrate and heal through this experience. And the curiosity was like kind of motivation behind everything. Actually, I was just like, okay, why is this happening, and how I can expand and like learn from it. And
mm-hmm.
uh, I remember when I was on the primary school, like my teacher was really telling me like, hey, you are so cool, curious, like you really like those big eyes, and like, hey, I wanna understand. I just want to understand what is this life about.
Mm-hmm.
um so it's really nice to connect with you in this way and feel the story. And I there is this thing like, so you studied all of that, and you were connecting with your inner spark and inner wisdom, and having those experiences and different kind of phenomena. So what is the when was this moment when you kind of like um, started to own it, you know, like, I mean, you know, there is this point when you are done with the healing, like with the major part, and you start to give and serve, you know, there is this amazing moment.
Well, okay, so the first 12 years of my life was like unquestioned bliss.
Hmm.
It was like unquestioned. So there was no reason to question it. It just was what
Hmm.
it was. And it was beautiful and loving. And I'm incredibly grateful for fantastic upbringing with parents and sisters and village. Very simple, very ordinary, and very grounded, very practical, very loving, very kind, and still is. Whenever I go back to my village, that's what I feel there. It's like rooted.
Hmm.
There's almost like not a need for religion. Someone once told me that religion occurs in cities where people disconnect from nature. Moving the abstract to the mind, and you're trying to search nature through ideas instead of actually going out into the forest.
Hmm.
So anyway, it was very natural for me to find that in the wildness. You know? Poets Wordsworth and Coleridge used to write poetry on the Quantock Hills where I lived, and often I'd go up there at night time and just really just connect to the stars and the moon and just be part of that. And live very close to Glastonbury as well, so I'd always be
Hmm.
amongst all sorts of spiritual, metaphysical people. Something in my nature has always been this. It's like I've not known not being connected. Not really. There have been temporary moments of not feeling connected. Yeah, where I've been, so enmeshed. I remember when I was like 12, 13, they'd tell horror stories at school as well. Catholic public school. This terrifying dormitory with flapping windows and darkness and a candle. They'd be telling horror stories. And this was on top of my psychic opening and abuse story. Right? So it's like my whole nervous system was like super buzzing on hyper alert. And, I couldn't distinguish between what was being said as being true or not. Yeah? Because they
Hmm.
told ghost stories about the place. Do you see that I was in? They did, 10 years ago, some boys did this in this corridor, and I'd be in that corridor as they'd be telling the story. Do you see? So
Hmm.
I couldn't really distinguish. And these, in some ways, was my like a series of dark night of the soul moments where, like, I feel it was necessary for me to feel the power of the psychic phenomena. Yeah, in the realm of terror. Yeah, because it humbled me. Actually, it humbled me and showed me this is not a force to mess around with.
Hmm.
Like a lot of people, drink all sorts of medicines and psychedelics and deep, powerful breathwork things. And actually, before you do that stuff, it's worth having a really deep, humble consideration. What you're tapping into is universal life force. What we're used to living from is mental projection, which is like a tiny drop of life force. Yeah. And often people start to shake and convulse, and the tremendous what so-called healing phenomena happens as you access this pulsation. And I think there's a lot of unpreparedness for like kundalini awakening because people haven't understood the depth and the power of all this stuff. And I found out randomly sometimes, and luckily I met my first master when I was 16, and she
Hmm.
trained me in meditation and intuitive counseling and healing for 7 years. And then I was very fortunate to meet an alchemist who then trained me for another 7 years. So I had quite a lot of disciplined, focused mentorship from people who really guided me on very intricate details around breath work and healing flow and energy movements. So it kind of regulated the awakening in a way. A lot of people have random awakening in with no support, no mentorship, and then they end up in a mental hospital, yeah? Or they go into breakdown or hyper anxiety. And actually, this sense of spiritual emergence, if the community was different, would understand this, and lots of people are waking up to this. It could be met with mentorship, and people could be guided through these transition moments of moving from the mental sphere into the heart sphere. Yeah. Now, I always see it energetically, actually. It's like for me, it's really what we're doing constantly is upgrading our vibration.
Hmm.
When we're referring to abundance here today, it's like it's a question of vibration for me. It's like I'm operating at a light bulb voltation, and that gives me a certain quality of experience, which lights up a tiny bit of the room. And now I'm like a football stadium with the floodlights on. Yeah, and I just see the whole stadium, the whole game, and I'm in it, and I'm lighting up the place. And then even bigger, I'm like the sun. You see, it's like you're acclimatizing to different voltages. And I did call for it, but I got struck by lightning on the 21st of June. So it was on summer solstice, about 5-10 years ago. Can't remember when exactly. It was a ball of lightning hit me while I was doing the washing up. And a ball of lightning is you get a fork hit the ground, and then all the balls fly off. You get about I don't know how many, but there's hundreds get flown off. And one hit me in the elbow, came through my system, went through my body. And up until that point, I was like eating meat and I was drinking beer now and again. And I immediately became vegan, right?
Yeah.
Immediately went out exercising, and for the next month, I lived on this lightning. Like my body vibration just went up instantly. Yeah? At first I thought I was going to die. I was checking in with my vitals, just okay, good. Ooh. And then I was like, I felt like one of these superheroes with like excess voltage. Yeah, and that's what it was like. Yeah. So it was a very strong initiation that I called for. I prayed for this actually. I thought, wow, that would be so interesting to be hit by lightning, and I did. Got hit by that, and it upgraded my system. And then after a month, I felt it actually come out of my fingers. I felt this energy pouring out, and it left me with a residue of what was possible.
Mm,
When you can live and up your vibration to a certain level, you have more vision, more clarity, more wisdom, more awareness, more healing, more possibility. Yeah? So that got me more and more interested in it's like, wow, life really is vibrational. When we start to look from that view as opposed to solid objects or belief systems, those things are so slow motion. Yeah, they operate so slowly. If you have to believe your way through something to get somewhere, then it's like walking through muddy water for me. Whereas if you can be inspired and tune into the frequency, it happens almost instantly most of the time, as long as you don't bring resistance to it. Yeah. And I think that's one of the secrets around active creation is we can have great ideas, but then we often resist the idea,
yeah.
the vision, and then the resistance comes in because fear comes in because you start to believe I'm not good enough or I don't deserve this. Yeah? So if you can get up ahead of that and identify all those not good enough thoughts and release them, so you don't bring any resistance to it. So when you have a beautiful vision, you have beautiful support for that vision. Then you take the aligned action, then it happens, and that's what people call flow state. So when I said the abundance challenge for these 3 days, it's just this invitation to look at the realm of resistance, and where we put up this limiting belief in the way of, and if we can really identify that and where that kind of originates from and release it, then it's like all there is open flow. All there is a powerful manifestation from inside outside.
And that's a beautiful state, and it's actually now like it's our true nature. It's beautiful to tap into this flow and be there for some time. Like then life is so effortless and light, and like everything is just falling into the place. Like I really recommend people who will watch this or are watching this, like if they feel that they are like resonating with you, like to go deeper, because I'm now in the container of 2 months journey called Ignite Your Soul Expression.
Mhm.
And meanwhile, I'm doing some quantum flow healing on me, and it's really intense, but like the reality is shifting. And it's not first time I am experiencing those quantum leaps, but it's so fast. It's like in a day, you can just, like din, din, din. And the next day you are on total different place, surrounded by total different people on the different vibration. You are just moving through those densities and dimensions. And then you are like, okay, so this is me actually, like I'm a multidimensional being which can like travel through space and time like nothing. And wow, it's amazing to see it from those higher perspectives.
Mhm.
And man, like being being by the lightning bolt, like it's instant upgrade. It really must be amazing.
It was a great free workshop from Mother Nature. Really, she's great. There was it's tremendous, but I recognise that in some ways this is what we're all going through. Is back in the '60s they talked a lot about raising consciousness. Yeah, it's like this is where most people presented it.
Mm,
And what I know, and I'm sure what you know, is that consciousness and energy are together, and it wasn't brought into the same sentence. If you raise consciousness and energy in equal measure, manifestation happens. So a lot of people raise consciousness, which got lots of bright ideas, but they're not matching it with the same frequency of energy. So people get disappointed. I have all these great visions. Why isn't it happening? Because your vibration is saying no to it. Your consciousness is saying out loud, I want more money, bigger house, this, that, the other. but the vibration is saying no to it and resisting it and oscillating at a lower frequency. And so there's no vibrational matching. So the secret for me is to have a clear intention, then match it with clear vibration, so that they're in complete symbiosis together. And then creation is a natural response, has to, because you become magnetic.
Mm.
Once you become magnetic with your desire, this is another thing I teach is about collapsing the gap between you and it. So, often people project a future of what they want to be someday, one day, but they keep projecting it into the future
Yeah.
instead of I am presencing it now, lining up the energy in this moment, and then taking the aligned action from presence. And also, the other important thing is to take continuous steps every single day, even if your
Yes.
vision is going to happen in 10 years' time, you can still manifest it right now. And my primary way of doing that is on the dance floor. I've just started this trance dance training. It's a 4-month journey. That's an advertising point. It's still open. But actually, just to recognize that when you trance dance something, you so fully become the thing you're wishing for that you are the living vision. So it's like if someone were to touch you with their psychic awareness, they would see the visions pouring out of you. They wouldn't relate to you as a personality. They relate to you as a visionary holder.
Mm.
And sometimes we're around people like that, where we actually feel the field of the vision that they're holding. And that's what we call magnetism or charisma, is that they've become a field phenomena. You see, if you keep saying to yourself, I'm a personality, like a locked structure, then the minute I've defined my historical story, that's the end of, that's it, you know me. I know Guy now, he's this, this, and this, A, B, and C. That happened when he was 5, 10, 15, 20. When you become a field dynamic of vibration and consciousness, your system's open.
Mm.
And people feel you as a field phenomenon. And then they start to recognize themselves in that. Yeah? Could recognize, like we've got this common affinity, it'd be interesting to explore that with you at some other time about the sexual abuse. Yeah? So there's a physical event where there's similarity, but then there's all these vibrational correspondences that we could probably discover as a consequence of that, which then move us into this and this and this and this inquiry. Yeah? So it starts to open up another level of giftedness.
Mm.
I am going to write a book at some point, from the trauma to the gift, the dance
Yeah.
of the wounded healer, because I really feel it's important that we can embrace shadow dance in such a healthy, beautiful way, and recognize it is part of the wholeness. To actually see that this is actually what
Totally.
allows us to grow in more fullness. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel blessed now when I overcame that and went through that and survived. Actually, I feel so grateful that I could experience that, because it was just the initiation which helped me to become who I am now. And
Mhm.
like, I guess the like to write book about that, it sounds amazing, because when I started to ask people actually about abusement and sexual abusement, and I was discovering this field, I found out that every second, or third person has this kind of experience, but they are not talking about it.
Mhm.
It's wow, it's huge actually.
Yeah, I mean, just to give a voice to that, if anyone's listening or listens later, just because there could be a tendency to hear this conversation as a spiritual bypass. Yeah, it's like, okay,
Mm.
you had sexual abuse, and now you're in this enlightened flow, and that's all good and fine. Thanks for yeah. So this is where I like to call in, like, and just you've already mentioned it, this multi-dimensional awareness. For me, there's truth in everything. Yeah, there's the relativity of truth from every single dimension of my being. Right? So what I mean by this, in my lower three centers, which is the wildness, the power, sensuality, and identity. The base, the sacral, and the solar plexus. In that realm, there is anger, there's
Mm.
trespass, there's crossing a boundary, there's defense, there's protection, there's upset, and those are absolutely real and true feelings that still exist. Yeah? In my primal biological self, there's this sense of wrongdoing and upset and victim. You can even call it that. Yeah? This was done to me at an age where I wasn't able to, set borders, create context of boundary, or say no in that clear way. Yeah? And so I can honor that fully. Yeah?
Mm.
In the same breath, I can also honor my heart space, my throat, my third eye, my crown, which sees the blessing of the experience because it strengthened my core, deepened me into an understanding of sexuality, of emotion, of clarity, of boundary, of communication. Yeah. So I've taken from that traumatic experience this learning, this thing. But it didn't mean I didn't set boundary. Doesn't mean I don't say no to that behavior. Because sometimes people could hear it a bit like, Thank you so much for the initiation. Great, bring it on for me. I'd like some of that too, right? And it's like we then cause all this trauma in our system because we want the awakening that comes from it. Life will happily give you enough trauma. You don't have to ask for more. We could come along and give you your own initiation experience. So this has been really healthy for me, and this allows me not to spiritual bypass anything. Yeah, it's like if there's a voice of anger, the voice of anger is present. If there's a voice of love, the voice of love is present, and they coexist. So I'm not trying to be in my crown chakra. I'm not trying to be just in my base chakra. I'm allowing myself to be in all of it all at once. And that's what I love about what I've realized here is this integration. Everything has a perfect place. Then all of me feels seen, you see? If I believe that I'm in this contraction of my animal body and it's somehow wrong or bad, or I should be better than that, yeah, then I'm constantly in a fight with my animal. And that's the age old Christian or psychological game of mind over matter, trying to discipline and control the beast, you see, instead of allowing your natural animal to be as it is in the container and the context of the heart and the vision and everything else. So that's also part of this abundance, the fullness. Everything has its perfect place and flow in this.
Yeah, and giving voice to all parts, like you say, that was for me really important on this journey, to really go meet all of those parts and just like embrace them and listen to them and give them proper love and care. And sometimes it meant to be really angry and express like what I didn't express in that moment again towards this person.
Mm-hmm.
And be ready to really like stand for me and hold my ground and like take this power back. But in the same time, like you say, there this understanding from the higher perspective of this person, that wow, you chose to do this to me as agreement between our souls to move forward evolution. Like wow, like thank you for this. Like then you can touch even, and this is really controversial for some people, but like Adolf Hitler, and like embrace his purpose on earth, like to do what he did here to many souls. And what happened after that, he was just like making faster the evolution of humankind to prepare what is for the times we are now in. And of course, like it was violent, and yeah, it's really like it's hard to talk about those things with people who don't have the understanding of those high perspectives.
Mm-hmm. I think the humility is that place inside of us that we don't know. Yeah? Is that as a human being with limited awareness, we operate sometimes on judgment, sometimes on reaction, sometimes on
Mm,
opinion, and that's what we need to do to safeguard our family, community, life existence. If we didn't have a primal survival instinct, we wouldn't still be here. We got run over and eaten poison years ago. So we adapt and change according to the physical environment of what's present. And so in that regard, in the realm of like the lower three centers, there is definitely this realm of contrast and duality, opinion, judgment, territory, and war and battling. Yeah? And for me, that's not going to go away. This idealization that we're going to be in a state of peace for me is inaccurate. What I notice in all of this is that when we prioritize one center over another, that's when it becomes problematic. So if I were to, and I did this because I meditated for like 10 years on my third eye and crown, and I pretty much forgot that I was human. I was just seeing everything as light and love, and it was beautiful and peaceful. But I forgot how to be sexual, emotional,
mm,
make any money, ground in the world, be
mm.
relational, deal with anything political or responsible in the physical realm. So for me, it was important to recognize that that has its place. Yeah, this has its place, and it all has its perfect place. And the power is in integration, in the integration and coexistence. I'm also into this place of in some areas of having absolutely no opinion about anything.
Yeah.
And I've reached my edge of like, oh, I can see this much, but I have the humility to recognize I can't see the whole story or the whole picture.
Mm.
Yeah. So it does become controversial if you talk about these more difficult characters on the earth, yeah, where clearly damage and victimization and death has happened in recent history. So there's huge amounts of very powerful emotions which work in contrast to that. Yeah? I mean, I pray for a world where we don't need war and devastation to wake us up. where we don't need the chaos and the confusion, that we get to a state of being more awake and aware to actually see what's going on quicker. Because for me, if we have to wait till it's arrived all the way in the physical world, it's like we've missed all the internal signals.
Mm.
It's a bit like illness. It's like illness begins as a vibration, moves through the images, emotions, thoughts, and manifests in the cells. So if you're going to do an authentic healing, you work all the way back and all the way through every different dimension holistically. Yeah? Holistic medicine, where you're looking back at causation. Where did the vibratory cause come for this manifest illness in the physical form? But the quicker you start to notice this, the more psychically aware you are, you start to feel it in the subtle vibrations. And so you can adapt that with breathing and energy and dance and movement and prayer and intention. There's lots of ways to shapeshift before it's hit the physical. Um, so this is a question of like really inviting us all into a more subtle awareness that we are not just this physical appearance on the outside. We're not just this personality that's rooted in a story and a history and a context of conditions. There is so much more to us. And I do genuinely believe and feel and know that all of us have this access. This is given. This is given to all of us. But as long as we stay convinced in the paradigm that we're not this, that's going to be the appearance of our reality. It's almost like you've got to kind of sledgehammer your way through that ice block initially, to like, okay, well, for me personally, another story is I got to a point where I just got so bored of feeling victim in my life, being left. It's like I used to be in relationships where I'd get left again and again. Oh, I'm the victim of this, victim of this. And then I'd look for sympathy to get loved, to get back into relationships, to be left again. So I
Mm.
can see the sad story that I created for myself and then reinforced and then reproduced and then continued with again and again and again until the point where I just had enough of myself doing this. I realized that I was conspirator in this outcome and I just chose a completely different course. And the moment I chose a different course, different outcomes came immediately.
Yeah.
And that was like, whoa, okay, listen, I'm part of this creation process. And if I can drop my victim and manifest my already love, I'm already present, I'm already alive and beautiful and worthy and fantastic, then that's going to be reflected in the mirror. And so it is. This comes almost instantaneously. The minute you drop the interpretation of something, I don't know if you heard me say this thing about putting your limiting thoughts on trial. Did you come in at that point?
Yeah, it was a nice one.
Yeah, it is important to do this, to actually vigorously challenge the places inside of us that keep repeating our limitations again and again and again. It's like asking the question, what am I here for? Am I here to suffer, to be victim, to not do? And one process I do, invite anyone listening to do this, is write your own obituary today. All right. If you were to die today, what would your obituary of your life sound like? Yeah. Well, I dreamt of doing this. I thought I could do this, but didn't quite manage. Yeah. Right. And now fast forward 10, 15 years into your realized self, your heart self, and then write your obituary from that perspective. The one
Mm.
who did, who shared, who opened, who gave, who lived fully, who switched on, who was courageous, and see the different outcomes. And recognize that you have the power in your hands and heart and mind and focus to manifest it that way.
Mm.
Something has to switch on inside of us. I mean, that is a free will choice. At some point, I've chosen when I came here to Earth to switch on myself, to actually, to keep myself awake. And, I allow situations to wake me up, not put me back to sleep. So this keeps me focused and present and alive in this continuous, if you like, this continuous flow state.
Yeah, it's great inspiration. Like all of us, we have this inside of us. Like this there is this button we can switch on
Mhm.
and be enlightened, like in the instance. But the thing is that there is, I saw in myself and I experienced that frustration from like that I couldn't touch that button because I needed to go through the experience and through the process to kind of grow in the moment that I can switch it on. Like, it was, the
Mhm.
process was needed and it couldn't be pushed, or like, or try hard to achieve that. It was the process and it was kind of like planned or scheduled. Uh, that I need to go through those experiences to understand, and then I could really start to shine. But until that point, it was just going through this valley of darkness and meeting all my shadows and demons and everything. And I believe that mm, we are now awakening as a humankind a lot. Like there is a beautiful process going on, and it will continue. And some of us were like more pioneers and having those first lines, and now we are like showing the way to others, and they are joining us, and it's massive and it's exponential, and it will actually become more and more in this year and next months. Like we like just this year will, wow, I can't imagine even how powerful this awakening will be.
Mhm.
So I believe that we all set up kind of like the timing of our moment of pressing that button and switch on.
There is that. I just also bring challenge, not necessarily to you, but also to myself and maybe others, is that sometimes we can get so interested in our own healing that we prolong it. It's it's like being in the ending of a relationship, knowing it's over, but not having the courage to leave.
Mm,
Right?
mm,
So you have this intuition it's done. Now I met a man who was at the time was about 20 years older than me, and he said he just chose one day, my healing is done.
mm.
I know it's not over, but I'm done with it, and I choose from this moment onwards to celebrate with gratitude and grace the life that I have. And it was interesting is like this idea of like getting healed to a state of perfection. Well, when you're going to die anyway, it's like healing for what purpose? Yeah. And I recognize that sometimes we can get so addicted to a healing process or an awakening process that we get lost in the process and not in the realization. Now, for example, you can drink cacao, take medicine, and get high on the phenomena and the experience and everything else that's happening. Yeah? And you can continue with that with more of it next week and the more week after. And it's no different to any addictive behavior. And it's disguised as a spiritual activity. Yeah? But really, it's just another addictive behavior that gets you high, or, it's the search to avoid pain and look for pleasure, which is pretty animal oriented. Yeah? Awakening is got nothing to do with emotion. It's not about feeling better. I think when you couple these things together and you think it's like, oh, I'm going to feel better or great or fantastic, it's like, for me, that's like a fundamental illusion. You're looking for an outcome or a reward from this. Yeah? Now, realization itself is the reward, if there is such a needed thing, which there isn't. Yeah? But then it's this allowing yourself to be so fully in what is emerging without grabbing it or holding it. And that was interesting for me to get to that point where it's like, you know what, I've done enough healing right now, and I'm not pretending at any level I'm fully healed. I've still got shadow dance and movements in my system and processes to work out. But actually, I've switched my focus into service, into giving, into creation, into celebration and gratitude. And that was a deliberate choice to swing my intention. Yeah, it wasn't an avoidance of it. It was just like, I've done that for so many years, and now I'm going to do this. And from this place of creation, it's like, well, actually, the consequences, I do feel better. Yeah, I do feel more fulfilled, more healed, more active, more alive, more engaged. But that wasn't the reason for doing it. The reason for doing it is I wanted to activate my creator. I had a desire to have the experience of one creating his existence. And before that, I had the desire for one to heal his own existence. So I went through different stages, but it was almost like a decisive movement from one to the other. But as I was just saying before, sometimes in relationship, we can prolong it.
Mm,
you know you've reached the end of something and it's time to move on to say goodbye. Yeah? But then there's this fear of like letting go of the familiar, letting go of the attachment, letting go of the crutches. Now, who are you if you're not someone trying to heal yourself? Who are you not someone trying to get enlightened, is it? If you drop the spiritual mask and the spiritual activity and any kind of role play, and I think, you're a man, I'm a man, there's this often in masculinity, there's a search for definition. It's like, looking for approval. I don't know, women, you can challenge me on this, but I think it's more of a primary thing with a masculine focus is to look for status and symbol outside of himself. The penis is moving out, the vagina is moving in. It's like we're searching for something over there, to seed something over there, to get something over there. And so, which is why we get so attached to roles and rules and status. And when they fall away, there's
mm,
a sensation of like loss and desperation.
yeah.
And actually returning to this integrated state of harmonized masculine and feminine is even like right now, it's like, people's jobs collapse, economic falls apart, all the definitions of dropping and dissipating. And, I'm sure there have been a whole series of men and women who've like been grabbing in desperation to hang on to stuff which is no longer there. And then from that death comes the phoenix to reinvent yourself. Yeah? But not to get caught in the game of needing something to define your own existence. And I found that so liberating when I didn't need anything to define myself as a loving being. I don't need you, don't need your recognition or applause or seeing or anything, any kind of acknowledgement. I see it myself. And that's relaxing. It's like you're just relaxing into a deep space of center where you're not looking for the thing over there to give you something which is already here. So I feel there is a large activity of seeking phenomena,
Mm.
which is hoping to get awareness. Yeah? It's like it's looking for realization, but it doesn't know it's looking for that. Yeah? And so you get lost down this rabbit hole of more and more phenomena, which has to get stronger and stronger and stronger, and more intense, intense, intense. And we call that phenomena spiritual experience. Instead of waking up in awareness, and the phenomena happens, but it's a byproduct.
Yeah.
Yeah? And when you see it that way, it's like you carry on growing as the whole tree. It's like you carry on growing and evolving, but without, oh wow, I can have vision now. I'm more psychic. There's more healing. There's more energy. It's a bit like, oh, that's interesting. But if suddenly you don't define yourself as that, a miracle happens. Wow, amazing, fantastic. Thank you so much. But you stay present, present, present.
Mm. That triggers kind of a question in me. I noticed in my life that this kind of experience, I'm just being, and suddenly I realize that something is happening in me and that my abilities are growing. And then someone comes and explain me the structure. For example, I have strange dreams, and someone comes and say, "Hey, this is like a lucid dreaming stuff." And many people around me were like into that thing, like I want to be a lucid dreamer. I need to do this and this and this. But I had the opposite way of reaching that. And I was always curious, like, what is the difference? Like, why I'm having this kind of experience, like more like backwards engineering kind of stuff, like that you see the whole and you make a little parts from it to understand that, instead of building the blocks parts to have a whole,
Mhm.
if you know what I mean.
I do. I mean, my first teacher, she said to me, um, basically, her teaching was meditation is everything. Yeah? And you'll be given the gifts you need whenever you need them. Right? So make meditation your devotion. Make meditation your priority. And what she meant by meditation was coming back to that state of wholeness and home, like being so relaxed into who and how you actually are. And then somebody shows up and they need healing. The gift of healing arises. Somebody needs some clairvoyance. Clairvoyance arises. Yeah? Because all these things are intrinsically part of us. These are meta functions that are part of our being. Yeah? Now, of course, it's also important what the Buddhists teach to cultivate mind training, vision training, lucid dreaming training, to cultivate our abilities. I think that's important. It's a bit like physical fitness, which is multi-dimensional fitness. We're working out on all the different levels of this vehicle, so we put it in tune. You wouldn't play guitar out of tune, so like you tune the vehicle up, make it sound nice, and then you offer that to the heart to play the instrument. Whereas, this comes to the part of the misinterpretation of who and how we are, is that we give the power to the instrument, not to the player. Right? So we let the mind play
Mm.
itself. And so it does. It plays itself as its egoic structure until the heart comes home. But the minute the heart sits into the middle of the mind stops playing its games and says, "Oh, thank goodness you showed up. I was so busy keeping everything running. All right, I'm so pleased to be given guidance and instruction." So for me, there's no need for ego death or this ego bashing approach that some people have. It's more about the ego is integrated into the heart and then serves the heart. So my personality is happily in alignment with my heart without any resistance. Guy does what the heart resonates, because that's for me what the Buddhists call right action. I'm not Buddhist, by the way. I just really love the clarity, the principles that come through this. So I feel there's a place for us to do cultivation work, where we do the cultivation. We put in the multi-dimensional fitness, if you like, to fine tune. But then there's this moment of like offering all of that to grace. To tune it all for its own sake, like just to get fit, get fit, get fit, and then never offer that to the heart to utilize your fitness to manifest,
Mm.
beauty through the movement that you have in your body. And that's the way I've always seen this. This is a human instrument that I'm in, and I'm very appreciative of my human instrument. It can do amazing things, and yet the heart is the one who's running it. Yeah, which is who I really am, and that allows me then, as the heart, to then express more accurately through the different vehicles. And I'm constantly surprised by different phenomena that comes. Yeah, it's like I've been running
Yeah,
workshops now for like 30 years or so. And most of the time, I do a little bit of preparation before, a few bits of music and exercises. But in the moment of teaching, I just get inspired, switched on, and creation happens. And always new exercises come, new combinations of music, new synchronicity that I couldn't have seen before. It's like I wasn't able to see it. It's like in the preparation stage, I just gathered these elements. But in the actual manifestation moment, the universe uses me and everything I've prepared and then synchronizes it. Yeah, and I just love watching it happen. It's like the perfection of some of the journeys that just occur, by themselves because I allow it to happen. I give my energy to the inspiration to move through me out into others, into the field, which is so different.
that's us.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's so different just trying to mentally organize it or hold it or push it or will it or want it. It's effortless.
it's amazing. I experience this on my workshops too, and it's like so blissful to be just in that flow and receive those inner impulses and like I saw you in action like last year in Sacred Death Gathering. It was really nice to see you preparing, like the structure and like managing the concept and everything, and then just let it go and go with the flow and trust that it will be divinely organized and orchestrated for the highest good of all concerned. And that's the thing, and that's what I appreciate. And you can feel the difference because the field of this kind of creation or co-creation is much more powerful and like it's so intense that
Mm.
like the people are involved in the co-creation, so they can tune in and like kind of connect and plug in into the field and just be part of it, and then you are just like, yeah, you do. There is no doing.
I
It's
mean,
just,
people think I'm doing something. I'm like a conductor, but they're playing all the instruments. It's like,
mm,
I'm just waving a wand around, which is pressing a few buttons on the DJ system and saying a few words here and there. But the dancers that keep informing me. It's like as a teacher, I'm listening, 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 to the field. What does the field want? That's my prayer. What does the field want to do right now? And as it's manifesting through different people in different ways, and it shows up perfectly, perfectly, perfectly. Okay, we need more ground now. We need more air now, more emotion now, more intensity, more
mm,
relaxation. I mean, it's an incredible experience to be in that zone where it's happening in and through and as you. But this is I think it's good to talk about this and just bring it into the context of abundance.
mm,
I Okay, so for me, there's onboard potential. Yeah. So there's the potentials of this vehicle, my mind potential. I've studied a lot of language and different traditions. I've got a certain vocabulary that I can utilize from many different traditions, spiritual traditions, you know, quantum physics, ecology, poetry. I've deliberately embedded all sorts of different language systems so that I can speak to a whole range of different people. So I've downloaded all this stuff, yeah, and
mm,
acquired that and studied that. And then there's emotional literacy, the capacity to feel and know my body, my instincts. So it's like I've cultivated quite a lot there to have quite a wide emotional range so that I can express myself when certain energies move through my body. So it's got outlets. Yeah. Now, so these are the onboard potentials. Yeah. And this is what I call the cultivation process. Yeah.
mm.
Then we have off-board potentials. That's one way of saying it, or in the field potentials, which I feel I've never heard anyone talk about it like this. Yeah. But these are access potentials.
Mm.
And I feel this is what we are stepping into as a future of humanity when we understand onboard and offboard and can access them. So there's Guy here. I could talk to you just as Guy with my knowledge and tell you my stories and history, and we could have a lovely time together. But then we get into a moment like this where we're calling in the force. Like we're calling in the force to come through us to be interesting for us and anyone listening and to the universe that's listening. So we're accessing inspirational fields. And we're being willing to offer this mechanism, my voice, you're listening, my feeling, you're hearing, your voice, yeah, to be participating in this. So access potentials is something I've learned a lot about in shamanic trance dance journey. And I
mm,
feel this is
mm,
hugely important to recognize that, I've got a certain amount of capacity as Guy, but when I open up and tune into archetypal fields or mythic fields or inspirational or luminosity fields and let that through me, then Guy lights up at a whole other dimension. Yeah? And if you're sensitive enough, you'll feel it.
yeah,
Because you feel the field coming in. It's like, wow, we're just accessing quantum energy and comes through you. And, to all appearances, it's still Guy on the outside. You on the outside, yeah? But what's coming through us is coming from different multidimensional source energy. Now, in regards to abundance, this is hugely important because, you know, as Guy, I've had an abundant life, a beautiful life. I've traveled around the world, met lovely people. It's like, my own personal biography, life story is so rich for me. And I'm so grateful for my personal experience. But there's a lot of experience that I could not journal down because it's metaphysical.
mm,
I couldn't even describe some of the things that move through me and out from me and out into the field of other people. And yet I've been participating in those realities, but those aren't in the usual language of human stories. It's like field dynamics, energy
yeah,
shape shifting, lights, colors, geometric patterns. Stuff moves in and through the space that does its magic, that is utilizing me as a vehicle to express through, which I'm privileged to, but it's not really about Guy at all. It's like I've made myself available to the life to come through me. Yeah.
yeah. This is big, man. Like, I wanna express what is that vibration correctly? It's something like deep respect to your path, because I had the experience 3 4 weeks ago when I tap into the mm, let's say different state of consciousness, and I was seeing my life, and searching for men in my surroundings who are actually willing to follow those energies, and willing to open to the guidance and really manifest the light pillar on earth, and be representative of that. And I realized that I don't know many. Like, I know many people who are really, like, many men who are like open, they are wise, they are like doing the practice, they have discipline and everything, but the place from which they really operate, it's not that willingness to follow the source, to let the energy flow, and open and surrender completely to it, and it's fine. Like, we are learning, sometimes we are open, sometimes we don't. We are humans, so in the same time. But like, to have this kind of devotion and dedication, it's something I really need to be surrounded with and be inspired with, to keep going on my path, because I decided to do so. I decided a couple of years ago that this is everything for me, to be the channel of this energy. There is no higher purpose for me. And like, the story of Adam is just like a little part of it. I am magnificent, and it's about me. It's about what the energy which I can bring to people and serve, to places, situations, people, and human kind, and earth, and all the universe. And that's something I came for. So deep respect that you follow, and you have consciousness, awareness of this, and that you really tap into those experiences.
I mean, for years and years, it never made sense to me what it was to be human. It just made absolutely no sense at all. The definitions of I show up in a masculine body and go to an all boys school, and there's a certain expectation of what a man looks like or how he should behave, and I kind of went through it, hardcore initiation, public,
Mm,
this hardcore masculinity where you're fighting for survival and alpha dog and all that kind of stuff, and it taught me about leadership and honesty. And what it brought me to was like, well, my parents weren't around, my safety net wasn't around, there was no one I could run to for that kindness or support. So I had to really pull upon my reserves and my resources to discover who and how I am.
mm,
So it brought me to like who is Guy's style? Who am I in my integrity? And it brought me to a sense of individuality, or what Jung calls individuation, where I incarnated myself. Partly because I had to, out of survival. It's like I had to know my force and my boundary and my power in order to exist. I mean, there was one story. There was a lot of bullying at the school, and I was bullied often in the early years. And they moved me up a year early into a certain dormitory where I got had to run a gauntlet with pillows smashing you and people teasing you and pushing you and punching you. And I got halfway down this thing and I had enough, and I fought back.
Mm.
Yeah, and it's like it was a move which was based on instinct for me, and it's like in that moment after that, no one touched me.
Mm.
I stood up, and everyone was saying, "No, you got to run down here and just take it." And I go, oh, "Fuck that! I'm not taking this." And it's like it was coming into a vigor inside my system where my identity was bigger than the need to please or approve or follow others' instructions. Yeah?
Mm.
And you could conceive of that as a rebel or survival or power mode, but it's like it certainly taught me about my second center, my sacral center, and my solar plexus, which I feel are strong and anchored and rooted. Now, if I'd have lived my whole life out of that, I would have been in primal survival and territory and status. But fortunately, I had a huge number of initiations into the heart, mostly through women, meeting women,
Mm.
the sacred feminine.
Mm.
Whereas I managed to cross the bridge from my solar plexus into my heart. And, I say this in most of my workshops, ceremonies. I feel that this is the evolutionary path of humanity right now, to cross from the solar plexus to the heart, the,
Yeah.
the personality into your metaphysical self. Because there's love which is organized through the solar plexus, which isn't, it's love based on ideas. It's based on preferences and conditions and judgments and opinions and all these things. But when it moves into the heart, you really get this unconditional blessing. You understand compassion. You actually understand empathy, not as an idea, but as you cry with other people. You feel joy with other people. You feel the earth's pain. You feel the earth's beauty because your system is open and unconnected. Now you can't have that experience in the solar plexus because the solar
Mm.
plexus is run by the mind, and it's run by your history and right by your story. Yeah? So this bridging from the solar plexus to the heart is a huge awakening for most people. It's like, oh my god, this is what love is. Yeah. Suddenly, without knowing it, you become like a community member, a tribal member. You're
Mm.
interested in taking care of the earth and the animals and the planet and the bigger picture. That happens by itself as you evolve into the heart. Interesting. I did a workshop with Laura Antara, a Kundalini Awakening dance teacher, and she shared with me about the heart having two frequencies. It has many, but I like these two distinctions. She had the lower heart, the lower lungs, are about human love, like the love of your brothers and sisters, the love of a partner, intimacy, this devotional love. The higher heart is about bhakti. It's about the love of existence. It's the love of
Mm.
God. It's the love of goddess. It's just love for love's sake. Yeah, and it's like when you breathe into the top of your lungs, something else opens. There's another breath. Like the second breath into the lung for me, it's like switches a gear. It's like changing gears. It's like there's my lower lungs. Like I
Yeah.
love you, brother. Oh, I love you, God friend. It's just like hello Shiva. It's like something else shows up in the space.
Yeah.
So I practiced that for some time. Yeah, the movement from the lower heart to the upper heart, synchronizing that with the solar plexus, and that brought me into service. Which was not an effort. It wasn't a charity. It wasn't I should do. There was no duty or obligation. It was a natural consequence. Yep. In the solar plexus, you have these ideas and beliefs. I should be a good person. I should do this. Then you're based on a matrix of ideas. Yeah, it's not right or wrong, but that's just how it
Mm.
functions. When
Mm.
the heart is involved, wisdom comes in and just shares with you. Do this, do that. Share with them. Share this. And it's not coming from a solar plexus position. It's coming from the love of humanity, the love of existence. But then when you move into this upper heart, you get into, what I would consider to be gratitude or grace, where you're just so appreciative for being alive. It's not because of anything. It's great. It was a sunny day today, but it's not even because of the sunny day that I'm in appreciation. It's because I'm alive, and I know
Mm.
that I'm alive. Yeah? Now I was in that for a while, and I was in a ceremony, and it's supposed to. Well, why stop there? Why stop in the upper heart? For me, it's a bit like, wow, this is amazing. I'm in bhakti. I'm in love with existence. Move up into the throat. Start to speak the truth. Move up into third eye. Have clear vision. Move up into the crown. Go into purity of blessing. Yeah? And this thing is like, these are stages of evolution that are inevitable. Yeah, and it's just like you say, it's on a timeline a little bit. Yeah, but it's also on a knowing it's possible line.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have a timeline if you didn't know. I didn't know necessarily there was more to that. Yeah, and there was being the truth in speaking. There was seeing the truth in vision. There was opening to pure presence in blessing. And so I've allowed myself to unknot myself through my whole spine. Now it was useful to have teachers initiate me into that process and show me that's possible. If I wasn't shown that new horizon, I wouldn't have considered it.
Yeah.
So I think this is where open-hearted communication and sharing of one's story and journey is useful, because we start to see things. Well, I didn't consider that. I'll try that. I'll see. I'll open for that, and then we're helping each other on this huge evolutionary relay race. So we become round in the whole circle altogether. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. It's beautiful. I already feel there's a lot of harmonizing frequencies during this conversation in me. I feel some even blocks from my throat moving up, and now when you mentioned the upper heart, I got some clicks. Well, I have one teacher, and he's using actually much more this upper heart than the lower heart, and I was asking myself, what is this about, and what is the difference? So
Yeah. Well, you can
that.
thank Leora and Tara. She's a friend of mine, a great initiator of that. So, yeah, you can look her up under Kundalini yoga dance, Kundalini dance. Yeah. Um, this sense of knowing that we have multidimensional possibility. Yeah, I mean, it's just referring it back to the theme of abundance again. Is that if we live in the ceiling of the lower three centers, like if I define myself, this is all I am. Yeah, so you have a life based on power, money and sex. Yeah, it's not right or wrong. I'm not saying it with judgment. It's just that's what belongs to the lower three centers. Like in the territory, in the realms of that level of existence, these are the natural phenomena from that existence. It's not right or wrong. It's just what it is. Yeah. There's also an interpretation of the physical world, because that's what you believe to be true from that perspective. So, if you haven't been initiated into the heart, or felt vibration, or been struck by lightning, or meditated, or seen the breath of life, or opened up to levels of healing, then it's hard for you to believe what I'm saying. Yeah? But if you've tasted or sensed that there's something more to the physical, or you've had, clairvoyance, or vision, or lucid dreaming, or premonition, which I feel most people, human beings, have had when they get into the intimacy of being able to admit it. Most people I speak to have had some level of initiatory experience of other dimensional states. Instead of it becoming like a random event, yeah, like that happened in the middle of my car crash and I saw this, and then it never happened again. Right? For me, enlightenment is not a singular moment that you then make a story about. It's continuousness of being light,
Mm.
yeah? And that comes when you establish yourself as that. That's what I am. That's my primary foundation. So it's like I'm not less than that. I'm not other than that. I'm not a story which is trying to be that. I am that as a foundation, and then
Mm.
from that foundation, everything else lines up and makes sense inside of it. And so this requires a little bit of practice at the beginning, and it also, for me, requires a bit of a cultural shift into recognizing that we're not just human psychologies, we're not just human stories that need fixing or changing or adjusting or more positive thinking or more less negative thinking, right? To try and adjust the mental faculties. But actually, to me, that when we say we're operating from 10% of the brain, for me, we're operating from the lower three centers, which is, a certain voltage of our being. So reframing it that we're a full multi-dimensional system vibrating, what we're actually doing evolutionary is opening up the full spectrum.
Mm.
Right? And then you have this physical possibilities and these non-physical possibilities in the quantum field or morphic resonance. And I feel this field phenomena has been everything for me. I was shown this very early on when I was 16, when I first had experiences of healing and shape shifting and moving energy, and it blew my mind. It's like, wow, it demonstrated for me the capacity for other dimensional frequencies to come through this one. And so it showed me as an experience, not as an idea, as an experience. There's more than meets the eye. And then, like we said at the beginning, curiosity then leads you on a path to
Yeah.
discover more, ask questions, meet people, study this stuff. Yeah? And then you move on to the next and the next and the next, as we basically come up this, the evolutionary ladder. Yeah? And it's not about arriving in the crown. This was another thing. I was in this idea that when I meditated, that by floating through the third eye to the crown, I could be this yogi that I'd always wanted to be. And I realized I just hadn't included everything below that. And so I went on a reverse journey. My journey's not been about enlightenment; it's been about endarkenment.
Yeah.
I call it luscious endarkenment, happily. And it's about integration. It's about the integration of the god and goddess. It's about the integration of the masculine and feminine, so that everything is harmonized. And in that harmonic, we function at our optimum. Everything's in its right place, everything's opened, everything's flowing, everything's has a perfect expression where it's meant to, and everything's included. Yeah. I'm just bringing in a gentle awareness of time. Is that if you want,
Yeah.
if you want to come on, I'm going to be opening space again tomorrow and the next day. If you want to come on and chat again, really happy for that. And if not, this has been absolutely beautiful as it is.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
I tell you what, I will give another abundance principle just here, just in reflection to what's happening with us, is that there's something I want to say. Um, Sometimes, okay, so the law of attraction leads people into wanting more things, right? I can attract more things in my life, yeah, and it's good to understand how that works. It's good. It's good. It's good. All right, that's natural creative power. It's good to learn how.
Mm.
Right, it should be on the top of our education how to be a manifester. Yeah, but in the process of being a manifester, you forget to be the one manifesting.
Mm.
You forget to be the creator, and the creator, creatress, is your heart presence. It's prior to the manifestation. Right, the fountain is more significant than the drop from the fountain. Yeah, so I could have 1,000 drops and still feel dissatisfied. All the money in the
Mm.
world, this, that, the other, all the things of the world. But if I'm a fountain, I'm in this endless state of contentment because I'm the fountain. Yeah?
Mm.
To reverse engineer the law of attraction and come back to the primary causal law of being the one creator, like the law of the one, precedes the law of attraction. So for me, that's significant. I want to just
Mm.
emphasize that.
Yeah.
Anyway, and then something I also wanted to bring in is that when we're manifesting, sometimes it's important to get really specific details. It's like I want this
Mm.
exactly like this and focus it in detail. And I would call that yang manifestation.
Mhm.
Right? It's yang, it's deliberate, it's Shiva. It's like I want this exactly like this. Yeah? Right? Now that is not the only way of manifestation. There's a yin way, which is you open and surrender. You enter great mystery. You have a prayer. I want relationship or I want house. It's very simple. You make a simple request without any more details, and then you open for great mystery. Now, before this call, I was living inside of this principle, right? Is I'm open to the unexpected in this meeting. I get Zoom bomb, people come in and out, and you show up, right? And for me, it's like, wow, this is the play of creation. It's like, and this is like, I didn't organize this with the details. It has to go like this as a fixed substance, yeah. And I'm in this, conversation dialogue with you, and I love this. I love this.
Mm.
This has happened. This is real, and we didn't plan this. We didn't schedule this. I didn't call you about this. I just asked a question. Do you want to do this? And you say yes. Right? You respond. So one of the principles of creation is, causing details up to a certain point, and then releasing that to great mystery.
Mm.
And I love that. For me, that is where actually the real deep meaning of existence comes in, because you make space for spirit to move through you, higher levels of vibration to come through you.
Yeah.
So yeah, so appreciate you, Adam, for showing up as great mystery from the unexpectedness.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Guy, for opening space for this miracle to happen. And also, I'm grateful to me that I listened to the call, and there was this amazing moment with this portal, if it was woman or man, and in that test or like challenge of like going away, and that I returned back because it was really the commitment and confirmation that I want to stay here and that I don't feel to be disturbed at all. Yeah.
That's so good. Well, listen, thanks a lot, Adam. Should we say goodbye here?
Yeah, like people, take care, love each other, and see you maybe tomorrow. I will see if I will join, but definitely um I will get in touch also with you and write you something. There is something in my mind.
No, I appreciate that. Thanks a lot, Adam. And bye bye to
Ta-
everyone. Lots of love.
take care. Good night, guy. Ciao.